Hey everybody, it's Kelby with Yellow Band Coffee Roasters, and welcome to the Evening Brew. This is our podcast where typically I sit down with my wife and we have a conversation about coffee and where we are in life. However, my wife is in bed. She needed some rest, so I'm flying solo today. The other thing I really wanted to talk about was farmers markets. I do a lot of farmers markets. I've been doing them for 10 months now, and I'm at the point where I'm basically having a farmers market every weekend, but that wasn't true from the very beginning. My very first market was Garden Ridge Market, and it's a large market. There's a lot of vendors there. There's a lot of foot traffic, and it's a really good market that I still do to this day. In fact, we're having Garden Ridge Market Days tomorrow, so if you're in the San Antonio area, I guess you won't see this by that point. But usually it's the second Saturday of every month. So if you're in the San Antonio area and you want to visit, I'm always there. Uh, Anyways, that was my very first farmers market. Large market. I didn't really know what to do. I kind of had a panic attack about it. When I got there, I learned a lot very quickly. And now I have a kind of stable set norm for farmers market preparation. So this is just kind of my market journey, I suppose. So the very first market I did, like I said, was the Garden Ridge Market. I was stuck in a corner kind of near the bathrooms, and if you look at it on a map from an overview, it's like tucked away in the corner, which in my mind made sense. I'm a brand new brand, first time at this market. No one really knows me. It makes sense to put me off in the corner and just say good luck. However, that market ended up doing surprisingly well because I was actually in front of a secondary entrance. So we had a decent amount of foot traffic coming in, and then everybody who's passing by the bathrooms on their way out. I was one of the first booths to be spotted on the way out of that building. So I actually had a pretty good presence. My biggest mistake for that market was not bringing a chair. I stood the whole time, and by the end of it, my knees were hurting and my hips were hurting because I have terrible posture. And standing for 5 hours is long. It's hard for anybody, and you're on a pavement. So first lesson I learned, bring a chair. By the third month we were in operation, I had two markets. I had Garden Ridge on the second Saturday and Sunny Spot on the third Saturday. Sunny Spot's downtown San Antonio. Similar setup in a parking lot, but by that point, I had a better idea on a working flow. However, I still had it in my head to bring more stuff than I needed, and I won't learn that lesson until later. But most markets that you'll apply for will have guidelines or requirements. Like you'll need your own canopy. You're paying for a 10 by 10 space, which is average, or you can double up and do a 10 by 20, which is basically two spaces next to each other. They require a table. Most times they will ask for a tablecloth. Sometimes they'll require a tablecloth. I highly encourage a tablecloth because it just makes your whole presence nicer. And then weights for your canopy. Most places will say 20 pounds per leg. Most places we do is 40 pounds per leg, so I always have 40 pounds per leg. And then your merchandise, whatever it is that you're selling. I was so fixated on having the technology to get transactions back and forth that I kind of overlooked table presence. So the very first market, I just bundled up a whole bunch of coffee. And if you imagine a 10 by 10 square, if the top side is where people come, like customer facing, the back side is, my back. I had all the tables to one side. I had two 6-foot tables on one side. I had all the coffee lined up, and I was awkwardly tucked in the corner back here. And it felt awkward when I was setting it up. And as people were coming in, I'm a tall guy. So I'm standing in this canopy that's barely 6 feet tall, and I'm like, you can't see my eyes from the outside because I'm that, the canopy is covering my head. I'm standing, and then people have to come in, stand right next to me, who's very tall, with all this clutter immediately to the side of you. It was a mess. It was not fun to have that set up. And in my mind, that was the best way to showcase everything that I had. And I try to roast, all of the coffee I had because it was just like, go sell all the coffee, make all the money. And it was a humbling experience. I still made a good profit from it, but it was a humbling experience to see how much volume I can actually put out in one day versus where my head was in. So don't over-prepare. Um, so do not over prepare. So do not over prepare. Um, so do not over prepare. 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 So do not over Yeah, so after Garden Ridge, I was like, cool, I have a set number of what I sold, I have a set number of what I have left over. Next market, I was like, cool, re-roast, stock up to that number, to that top number again, even though I had plenty left over from the previous market. That's where my head was at the time. By the time I was at the 4th month, no, I think, yeah, 4 months in, I had 3 markets, potentially 4 markets. And by this point, I realized, okay, one table setup is better for us, having our coffees laid out in a row. And I was using these acrylic risers to kind of lift up the coffee. So when you're approaching, you see a staircase of coffee. That was really nice, but the ones that I had, the acrylic risers I had, were kind of flimsy. So they didn't stand up all the time. If you looked at them the wrong way, they would fall over. And then if one fell, it was like a domino effect to all the coffee. So, one moment you have 30 bags of coffee up, the next moment they're all on the floor. And that's incredibly awkward to do when someone's in front of you and you're in mid conversation about your coffee, because they feel awkward, like they want to help you set up. And then everybody's so focused on putting your stuff back on the table that they've forgotten why they were there in the first place. And then they just walk away feeling awkward. I only struggled with that for another embarrassingly 2 months worth of markets. And then I decided, these aren't important. So by 6 months in, I got rid of the risers. I had one table, and then my grinder. Well, I've been bringing the coffee grinder with me since day one. I didn't really know where to position it that made sense. So first market, all the coffee plus the grinder crammed in one side, and I was like crammed in the corner. By the second market, I had all the coffees on one side, and I had the coffee grinder crammed in the corner, and then I was sitting in the corner instead of standing. By the third market, I had one table in front and then one table on the side, kind of like an L shape. Both of these are 6-foot tables. So I had all my coffees would fit on one table. And then I had this giant empty table with just the coffee grinder and then, my water and my coffee that I was drinking, which looked really weird. So by the 4th month of doing farmers markets, which this was about 6 markets total. So one month was 1, second month was 2, so that's 3. Third month I had 4. So 3 and 4 is 7. Yes, 7. I'm bad at math, sorry. 7 markets in, I realized one table setup, smaller table for grinder, and then chair. And that is the setup I still have today. Because that worked. That was like a Goldilocks moment. Goldilocks? An aha moment. Yeah, and then getting rid of the risers was like the next aha moment, because yes, it made the table look nice, but no, it wasn't necessary. And when it went wrong, it made the situation so much more awkward than it needed to be, that the potential failure, which was increasing over time. These things kept bending and warping, and they stayed bent and stayed warped, and they wouldn't. It was a headache. Got rid of them, and I didn't really think of a replacement. In the back of my mind, I was like, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, but I haven't felt the need to introduce that again. So I haven't, and so far it's been fun. So neat. I mentioned the first market I was worried about technology. Now I'm mostly worried about the technology working, not necessarily having the newest thing. My iPad runs my POS. The POS is powered by Shopify, so it's all touchscreen. It's very user-friendly. It's so easy to set up. And our card reader that we originally were using stopped being supported, so I had to buy a new one. And then a week later, we upgraded our phones, which has an internal card reader that cooperates with the Shopify POS. So honestly, if I really wanted to, I could run everything on my phone and not even have my iPad. But I invested the money in the card reader. So I bring my iPad, I have the card reader, and my phone is a backup. And everything runs off of my hotspot really well. And occasionally nothing works. It's like once in a blue moon, the 5G network just wants to terrorize me and just stop working. So then my iPad won't talk to the reader, and the reader won't talk to the iPad. Then my phone won't talk to the iPad. And then I'm sitting there fumbling for 10 minutes while someone's just trying to pay for one bag of coffee. And I can hear them in their head saying, is this bag really worth all this trouble? And I'm sweating, saying, yes, it is. I swear it is. Please just hang on for like one more minute. I don't know that there's a better system. I really like Shopify as a whole. Like, if you're looking to have an online business, I would highly encourage you look into Shopify because it does make a lot of things easy. And 99.9% of the time, everything works. It's just that 1% when it doesn't work, it makes everything kind of awkward, but it's fine. It's good. Oh. 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 There's something in the bottom of that cup. Yeah. Sorry. I'll edit that out. Cool. So going on to today. Now, 10 months in, I'm basically at a farmer's market every Saturday. Oh, still have something in my mouth. That's gross. I have a farmer's market basically every Saturday. And they vary. Some of them are incredibly slow. Some of them are kind of are moderately filled. And then I have one, which is Garden Ridge, which is always a busy market, and Spunny Spot, which is typically a busy market. I think it's all very good to have a public facing something. I don't have like a coffee shop to walk into and drink coffee. My roasting facility is too small to supply like a retail storefront where you can go in and buy a bag of coffee and then leave. So having something public facing is really important for us as a brand because it is a consumable, right? People want to see and touch and feel. When you can't do that and it's strictly online, at least me personally, I'm very hesitant to just buy online. I want to see it. I'm a tactile person. I want to manipulate it. I want to know what the thing is that I'm buying. So I like having a public-facing thing, even if it's just a farmer's market. But farmers markets are also very crucial because it's a tight-knit community who go to farmers markets. It's usually locals only. It's very rare that I see people coming from across town to go to a different farmer's market. Every now and again, you'll have people who are like, I'm in town visiting family or visiting friends. So they're from out of state or out of city and they're at a farmer's market, which is kind of fun. But normally it's like the tight-knit local community that's at the farmer's market. Like the people who are in the neighborhood behind you or like who are 2 minutes up the road and they walked there. And that kind of community is really important to plug into because they're tight, they're small, they are creatures of habits. Most people are creatures of habits. So if they're in the habit of going to this farmer's market and they remember, oh, hey, there's a coffee guy there, I'll wait to the farmer's market to buy my coffee. It's fantastic, especially if it's good and the person who's behind the counter is really nice and good looking. So, over the 10 months, what have I learned are the most important things? Number one, make sure that you are a good steward. Be a good neighbor, right? Know the supplies that you need and make sure that it's well maintained. Your canopy is functioning. You can open and close it by yourself. You have the adequate amount of weights per leg. Let's make sure your tent doesn't go flying and become a hazard to anybody. Make sure your table is in good enough working order that it doesn't collapse on you. And then make sure you know what products you're selling. Talk about more of that in a little bit. And then finally, make sure you have a consistent, reliable way to accept money. It doesn't have to be a POS system. It doesn't have to be a card reader, although I do encourage a card reader because I think it's way easier on the consumer side to just pull out their plastic or tap on their phone. But any way to receive money that it's reliable, that you know how it's going to work, you know how it's going to function, that you can consistently do it repeatedly. Yeah, those would be like top tier, good steward, good neighbor thing. A little bit more on the good neighbor is when you're at your market and you're set up, at the very minimum, you're not causing trouble with anybody. In my mind, there's like a unspoken etiquette of don't holler out to people who are across the way on other people's booths. My rule mentally is whoever is immediately in front of my table on my side of the road. If you imagine a parking lot, there's usually 2 lanes. Your booths are typically set up in the parking spaces. So if someone's walking down the dead center, at that state, I typically just say hi when they cross my booth. And if they maintain contact and respond, I might shout out, can I tell you about my coffee? And then they're welcome to walk over. If they're walking right in front of my booth, I absolutely will greet them and say, let me tell you about my coffee. But if they stop at the booth before me or after me, depending on which way they're going, I leave them alone because that's their time. That's their vendor's customer. And sometimes you'll have a group of people at a booth next to you, and one or two of them will kind of glance over. I don't even engage with them. I'll say hi, but I won't like try to bring them over because they're with that group that's purchasing over there or whatever over there. I want them to have all the time that they need because sometimes people buy as a group. So, I want them to have their time. That's my etiquette there. And then being friendly with the vendors. I bring a little bag of office supplies with me that has like tape and zip ties and stuff. I had a market where it was incredibly windy, and one of our friends a couple rows down, they had some paper tags for their products that were flying all over the place. I was able to give them some tape. They could tape their stuff down and sell their products easier like they're used to because their tags were there. Just offering friendly things, being friendly, a good neighbor kind of thing. The next step. So good steward, good neighbor. The next thing is know your product, but more so be excited about your product. If you're not excited to talk about what it is you're trying to sell, how do you expect other people to be? As a consumer of a lot of things, if I'm not totally excited about a thing, I'm way less likely to have the internal dialogue to convince myself to buy it. Oh, water's really good at the end of the day, not coffee. I notice a vast majority of vendors at farmers markets who are reclined in their booth and are very okay with people just wandering and meandering and looking. I'd say more than 50% of vendors don't engage someone unless the customer speaks first. And in my mind, that's poor salesmanship, and it might be on purpose, it might not be. I don't know where they are in their vendor perspective, but I like to engage people. I'm pretty social, and I know that you can entice people, you can convince people of a good idea just by engaging in conversation. So be excited about your product, because when people feel like you are excited, they want to share that excitement with you and are way more likely to invest in whatever it is you're trying to sell. To start that conversation for me, I have an elevator pitch that's roughly 12 seconds long. It should be 11, but it's about 12 seconds when I get it out. It's just all the information they need to know. I have 4 points. Who am I? Where am I? What's special about me? And one other additional detail of why we're special. So Yellow Band Coffee Roasters, we're local to San Antonio. We source from bee-friendly farms. We have transparency with our importers so we know what's happening on those farms. A little bit more eloquent when I get it out, but those are the 4 main points. It's not much more than that, and that's just enough to engage the person. And then my follow-up, the 5th thing I'll do is, what kind of coffee do you like? Or are you a coffee drinker? Because that starts the conversation. And then however the conversation goes, usually there's a flow of, oh, you like this kind of coffee, let me recommend this. Oh, you like doing this, let me recommend this. It naturally goes into setting people up for something. I also like to encourage people to pick up the bags and smell them. We always have a one-way valve so you can get a little bit of the essence and the aroma of the beans. So if they have it in their hand and they can smell the product, they have 2 senses already working towards a positive end goal, which is to purchase. If they already have it in their hand, they can already vision themselves walking away with it. That was crazy. Hold on. Sorry, bug zapper was going off. Anyways, if someone has it in their hand, they can already envision themselves walking away with it. And then the aroma, the smell. 70 or 80% of your taste comes from your smell, something like that. It's a pretty high percentage comes from smell. So if they can smell it, they already have an idea of what that morning cup is going to taste like. So it's two senses working in your favor, plus the third sense, which is your hearing and your sight. I guess that's four senses. They're seeing the bag, they're seeing me engaging them, and then they're hearing what I'm telling them about not just the coffee, but our brand. That's four out of your five senses going into this single purchase. 9 times out of 10, if I can do that, I can get a sale. I'm not bragging as a salesman. I'm saying this is a thing that works. And then all while having a positive attitude, being excited about it. It's almost like you're it's not like selling at that point. It's just being excited. I don't know how else to articulate that. Anyways, be excited about your product and know it well enough to talk about it. If you're making something, be excited about the process. Tell them how you made it, what it's made out of, how long it took you, how you learned how to do it, applications for it. If you sew and you're doing tea towels, or maybe you embroider, you're doing tea towels, not only is this a great decoration, but it looks great in your kitchen or it looks great in your bath, but it's a durable material. These things are machine washable or hand wash only, but it's because they're delicately handcrafted, right? Like, just think of all the different ways you can be excited about it. Not manufacturer ways. Don't be fake about it. Be earnest. And if you're not really that excited about it, figure out why. Why are you even offering this product? Should you be offering this product if you're not excited to talk about it? Anyways. That's my son. Okay. Good steward, good neighbor. Be excited about your product. And then the final thing is, don't over stress about inventory. That might be specific to me. In the very beginning, I was always worried about not having enough, and so I wanted to roast more. But then I was having a back stock of bagged coffee, and then it got to a point where I realized, oh, some of these coffees are getting to a month old. That kind of defeats the purpose of being small batch and fresh roasted. So it's okay if you're out, be out for that market. That's okay. You don't have to stress about restocking immediately. Just be excited about what's left over. Or if someone asks about it, let's say it's a known product, like right now we're out of our Bolivian coffee. If someone comes up and says, hey, where's your carpenter bee? I can tell them, unfortunately, we're out. But if you're excited about dark roast, here's another one that I think you're going to love. And then just point to another product, see if you can convince them otherwise. It's a good thing to be sold out of something. That's a good place to be as a business owner. It's great to be able to restock, but it's okay to have the other inventory places have room to breathe and have their time to shine. So, yeah, don't overstress about your inventory. And finally, be present, right? You've committed the time and the money to be there for a set number of hours, and you've committed the effort to set everything up and make it pretty or whatever. Commit to it, right? Be present. Don't hide away behind your phone, or don't look bored in the booth, even if you are bored. If there's people moving, say hello, greet people as they're walking by. If they're close enough to your booth and you don't feel like you're going to encroach on someone else's space, encourage them. Hey, can I tell you about this stuff that I have? Or, hey, tell me about your bag or something. Engage people, be present. And my personal philosophy is whoever is in front of me is the most important person in the universe. Treat people well and you will be treated well, right? You get what you put in. You get out of what you put in. There's a way to say that. Anyways, be present. So overall, I would highly encourage you to look at farmers markets if you haven't before, as a small business owner or as someone who wants to make a little bit of side money on a hobby or maybe a passion project that they want to work on. It's a good way to plug into local communities. It's a really good way to get some face time as a brand. And I really enjoy that aspect of being a person, not a brand, a person with a brand, not just a brand with people behind it, right? So yeah, I think that's it. I think those are all my thoughts and ideas. So thank you so much for joining me on the Evening Brew. I really hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.